My mom told me, "Give your sister $50,000 or there's no wedding." When I refused, she slapped me so hard I ended up in the ER with a concussion. After that, I didn't beg or apologize. I did this. A month later, their perfect family image started to collapse. My name is Megan, I'm 32, and I work for a big development company in Columbus, Ohio. I do all the presentations, build visual reports for investors and city officials, pick everything from fonts to renderings so it all looks expensive, convincing, and finished on time. The job isn't exactly a spa day. One week my boss is texting at 3 in the morning, the next a project falls apart the day before a pitch to the mayor. But I love what I do. There's logic in it. Taste, order. Ryan and I have been together for 5 years. We met when he joined the project department. Back then we were still in the old office in a tired brick building on Main Street downtown. At first he seemed too proper, even boring. Then the whole company went to Chicago for a national urban planning conference. That's where it all started. He turned out to be the kind of man you feel safe with. No circus. Today is our engagement party. We've rented a cozy restaurant just outside the city. Everything is exactly how I wanted it. Real flowers, steady candles, music quiet enough that you don't have to shout. Not flashy, but tasteful. I look at Ryan, tall, calm, warm eyes, and catch myself thinking, so this is that thing they call women's happiness. He's holding me by the waist, saying something low in my ear, and it feels like even the air in the room is breathing with us. At the tables, our friends, co-workers, a couple of college girlfriends, Ryan's parents, and even his cousin who flew in from out of state. And of course, my family. Although in my case, family is more of a legal status than a feeling. My parents, Karen and Mark, picked a table closer to the entrance. They sat like they'd wandered into the DMV by accident. Forced smiles, and Brittany, my younger sister, was hunched over her phone, never once looking up from her feed. Standard. Her entire life is Instagram stories and cupcakes. I've lost count of how many iPhones she's burned through. We were never close, and it only got worse over the years. I tried not to notice these little details. It was my night, and I wanted to think about me and Ryan, about our love and our bright future. But then my mother stood up. She tapped a spoon against her glass. "Friends, a moment of attention," she said with an unnaturally soft smile. "First of all, congratulations to Megan and Ryan. We wish you happiness, love, respect, all the good things, so you don't end up like some people. Big wedding, huge debt, and then you're back living with your parents in their guest room." Applause, clinking glasses. I gave a polite smile. So far, nothing catastrophic. Then Mom kept going, and it wasn't warm anymore. Thank you, my dears. At this solemn and important moment, Mark and I want to make an announcement. The money we once set aside for Megan's wedding is going to be given to Brittany instead. She needs it more right now. The room went quiet. So quiet I could hear a waiter's shoe squeak. I stared at her. "Mom, you're joking, right?" I asked, smiling stiffly. "That's my money. It's in my account. We've already planned everything around it." She pursed her lips. "Don't be childish," she sighed. "We're talking about family. You'll manage. You've got a good job your Ryan is earning. You'll figure out your little wedding and your mortgage. But Brittany, it's harder for her." Ryan tensed at my side. "What money exactly?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. I knew what she meant, of course, but I hadn't expected this. "The $50,000 we saved for Megan," my mother announced to the room. "From when she was in college. We set it aside so both girls would have a start in life. But Brittany's situation is different. She lives much more modestly, she doesn't have such a salary. Her fiancé is trying, but it's tough. So we decided it'll be fair if Megan gives the money to her. She'll survive without it." The guests froze. Some tried to pretend they hadn't heard. Someone stared at their plate like the salad had suddenly become fascinating. I felt something in my chest start to boil. "Excuse me," I said slowly. "We planned that money for years. Part of it is for the down payment on a place, part for the wedding. We're not talking about pocket change here. We've been careful and responsible. How do you just hand it over like that?" Mom snorted. "You're starting a family. You'll be fine. You have steady jobs. You're getting a mortgage. You'll manage. You're not starving." Brittany finally tore herself away from the phone and stood up. "Megan, don't be so greedy," she said with fake sympathy. "What, you can't share? We could do a joint wedding. You can see I have it harder. Just have some compassion." "Harder?" I shot back. "Because you blew through everything you had, and now you want to take what's mine? Seriously?" Mom flared up instantly. "She lives modestly. She doesn't have your paycheck. Her fiancé is doing his best, and you only think about yourself. It's ugly to treat your own flesh and blood like this." "I've been working my whole life," I cut her off. "I save, I plan, I live like an adult. And now I'm being punished for someone else's irresponsibility?" Ryan tried to put an arm around me, but I was already in motion. The room fell into that heavy silence where you can hear nothing but cutlery clinking. No one knew where to look. Mom took a step toward me and suddenly, right there in front of everyone, slapped me across the face. Not a symbolic slap, a real one, full force. I didn't even have time to move away. The sound cracked through the restaurant like a gunshot. My head snapped back, my heels slipped, and I lost my balance. I crashed to the floor, knocking a glass off the table. Glass shattered. Voices jumped into a panic. "Miss, are you okay? Somebody get ice! Call 911!" My cheek was burning, but the back of my head hurt even more. Later they told me I'd hit the sharp corner of a wooden table leg. Everything blurred. My ears were ringing. Someone shoved a folded jacket under my head. Someone else pressed ice to the growing bump. I heard voices like they were underwater. I tried to answer and produced nothing but a garbled sound. Brittany was standing nearby, mumbling something incoherent. Not angry now. Scared. The manager ran over and called an ambulance. By policy, they also called the police. Someone had been injured in a fight in the dining room. One of the guests said firmly, "I saw it. She hit her right in the face." "And she fell and hit her head," another added. "There's blood." Ryan was right there, holding my hand, repeating, "It's okay. It's going to be okay. Do you hear me?" We waited for the ambulance maybe 10 minutes. By then I was conscious, but nauseous and dizzy. The paramedics looked at the swelling and the scrape and said, "Mild concussion at least. We need to take her in. She needs a CT." The police arrived almost at the same time. One of the officers came up to me in the doorway as they wheeled me out. "Are you able to tell us what happened?" I nodded, then said hoarsely, "That's my mother. She hit me." A guest stepped in. "Yes, we saw it. She slapped her hard, and the girl fell." By then they were walking my mother out of the hall. She was hissing that I was making it up, that this was a family matter. But the officer calmly explained, "Ma'am, there's an assault here and visible injury. This is not just a family argument. This is a criminal matter, and it happened in a public place." They took Mom aside to take her statement and write up the report. Not in handcuffs, but clearly not as a private little chat either. Everyone saw. In the ER, they did the scans, poked and prodded, and finally said, "Mild concussion, nasty contusion on the back of the head. No brain bleed, no fracture. Rest, no heavy lifting, no driving for a bit. Watch for nausea and headaches," the doctor said. "If anything gets worse, come back." I was still in shock. I barely slept that night. In the morning, Ryan came with fruit, documents, and one simple sentence. "Megan, we can't just let this go. I'm with you, all the way." We met with a lawyer that same day. They set us up with Rebecca, a calm, experienced woman in her 40s. No baby talk, no drama, just business. She skimmed the police report, the ER paperwork, listened to us, and nodded. "This isn't just a slap," she said. "This is an assault that sent you to the hospital. There will be a criminal case, most likely a misdemeanor, but still, we can also pursue a civil claim for damages. We'll do everything formally." "We will," I said. "This isn't the first horrible thing she's done, but it will be the last one without consequences." The case moved forward. Questioning witnesses, collecting the restaurant's security footage, the doctor's report. Everything confirmed that she'd hit me and I'd been injured. A few weeks later, there was a hearing. Mom stood there with a stone face. Her attorney mumbled about emotions and moral pressure in a family argument. The judge just smirked. "Families can have conflicts," he said, "but they shouldn't be sending each other to the emergency room." The sentence: a fine, around 200 hours of community service, court-ordered anger management classes and counseling, and $10,000 in restitution paid to me for medical bills and emotional distress. When they gave me the floor, I got up, looked my mother straight in the eyes, and said calmly, "You gave me life. And then you hit me so hard you almost took my health. I don't hate you, but after this, I can't respect you anymore." The judge didn't add anything, just nodded. After court, I moved through the days like I was numb. I hoped this was the peak and that things would calm down from there. Stupid hope. What happened at the restaurant didn't just spoil the relationship, it buried it. Mom stopped calling. Brittany blocked me everywhere she could. Dad? He just disappeared into his usual silent neutrality. Not for, not against, like I didn't exist. I tried not to think about it, but that didn't last long. A little over 3 weeks later, I came home from work, opened the mailbox, and pulled out a thick envelope. Certified mail from a law office downtown. My heart dropped into my shoes. I opened it. First words: complaint. From whom? From my parents. The gist? Unreal. They were suing me, demanding I return the $50,000 they'd once transferred for needs and education. And now, apparently, I'd used the money not as intended. Not for a degree, but for the wedding, renovations, and the down payment on a condo. In their version, it hadn't been a gift at all, but, quote, temporarily placed at my disposal with an informal understanding it would be returned on demand. At first I laughed hysterically. Then I sat down right there on the hallway floor and stared at nothing for a long time. As if it weren't enough that Mom had physically injured me and ruined my engagement party, and because of that we had to push the wedding plans back indefinitely, now she'd decided to land a second, finishing blow. I called Rebecca the next day. I had all the documents, bank statements, the wire transfer details, our mortgage paperwork, the venue contract, even old text messages with my parents. Rebecca flipped through everything and nodded. "The account is in your name," she said. "You had full control starting when you turned 18. There's no written loan agreement, no promissory note, no written conditions." "Right," I said. "It was just a wire transfer from their account to mine." "And you were already in college when they sent it?" "Yes." "Then forget it," she said evenly. "Legally, that's a gift. They can tell whatever story they want about what they meant. But if they didn't bother to put that on paper at the time, no court is going to treat this as a loan, especially since, judging by these statements, you spent the money through bank transfers on reasonable things, housing, wedding, basic living expenses, documented. The fact that they suddenly remembered some secret condition doesn't matter. The judge won't care." I exhaled. Good news, in theory, but the anger was still boiling. "Then why this whole circus?" I asked. Rebecca shrugged. "Because it's easier to blame you than admit they blew money on their favorite child," she said. They're protecting her, and you're the convenient target. That's when it really sank in. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was my whole life in miniature. There's always the poor girl, life is so hard for her, and the other one who will manage. For some reason, I'm the one who's supposed to pay for everyone else's mistakes. The next few months were hell. We wrote responses, collected more documents, pulled additional statements, dissected every detail. The case dragged on like they always do. Pre-trial hearings, conferences. My parents sat in the courtroom with Brittany like 3 statues. No glances my way. Just sour faces and eye rolls. Brittany looked like she'd come to a spa day. Full makeup, perfect hair, smug expression. At one hearing, she suddenly stood up and announced that the money had originally been intended exclusively for education, and that the fact I'd lived on it, bought furniture, and a dress was, quote, misuse of funds. Rebecca stayed completely calm. And you, as I understand it, had a similar amount transferred to you under the same conditions? She asked Brittany. Yes, Brittany muttered. Did you spend your money only on tuition and school expenses? Silence. Well, not all of it, she finally said. You dropped out after 2 years, correct? Rebecca continued. Then used part of the money to open a clothing boutique that closed in 6 months. Then bought a new car with what was left. Was that also for education? No answer. The judge raised his eyebrows. Well then, Rebecca said, if the conditions were identical, why are there claims only against my client? Silence again. Even my parents' lawyer looked uncomfortable. For the first time in a long while, I sat up straight and didn't feel guilty. This wasn't just a legal process. It was an attempt to paint me as stingy, ungrateful, difficult, when in reality I was simply inconvenient, standing next to someone's spoiled favorite. Ryan came to every hearing. He never missed one. He just held my hand. Sometimes he'd lean closer and whisper, "Remember, you're not alone. The truth is on your side." It didn't make it easy, but it helped me stay standing. We had to cut back on some wedding expenses. I slept badly. The back of my head still throbbed sometimes where I'd hit it. Occasionally, I'd find myself just sitting in the bathroom, staring at the wall. Exhaustion. Pressure. It's a special kind of shock when your own family is trying to erase you. But I kept going. Because this wasn't about $50,000, it was about respect. For myself, my life, my boundaries. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, my phone started ringing. First it was Natalie, Ryan's cousin. "Megan, I'm so sorry the wedding got canceled," she said quietly. I froze. "Canceled? Since when?" Your mom called me. She said you and Ryan broke up, that he cheated on you, that there was never really going to be a wedding." I sat there with the phone in my hand, not trusting what I was hearing. Over the next hour, 3 more people called. Acquaintances, distant relatives, even a college classmate. All with the same question. "Is it true the wedding's off?" At first, I couldn't figure out where this nonsense was coming from. Then someone sent me a screenshot. Apparently, I had emailed everyone personally saying there would be no wedding. The text was clumsy, but the writing style was close enough to mine to be creepy. I went through my own email. Nothing. It became clear. Somebody had set up a fake account, copied my name and style, and mass-mailed people. Pure impersonation. One goal: panic. One face popped into my mind immediately. I couldn't prove it. But the whole scheme, 100% Brittany's style. Sabotage had moved from the courtroom into my personal life. I called Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, one of the few relatives who hadn't jumped headfirst into this family circus. "I was just about to call you," she sighed. "Your mom's been telling everyone for a week that you and Ryan broke up, that he cheated on you and you lost it. She keeps repeating there was never really any wedding planned. It was all in your head. I leaned against the wall. At first I felt sick, then just disgusted. Why is she doing this? I asked, already knowing the answer. Because she's protecting Brittany, Aunt Linda said quietly. She's always covered for her, even when Brittany did downright crazy things. I love your sister, but your mom is like a bulletproof vest between her and common sense, and now she's dragging you down so Brittany will look okay. Those words hit harder than any court document. My own mother was wrecking my reputation to polish someone else's. That evening, Ryan came home, saw my face, and immediately asked, "What happened?" I showed him the fake emails, told him about my conversation with Aunt Linda. He clenched his jaw. "Yeah, I figured," he said. "Your sister messaged me too." He picked up his phone. "She says she has proof you cheated on me," he said. "Look." He turned the screen toward me. Pathetic, badly photoshopped pictures. My face glued onto some stranger's body next to a random guy. The lighting was all wrong, my neck twice as thick. It would have been funny if it wasn't so vile. "Of course I didn't believe it," Ryan said. "But can you imagine? She took it seriously enough to send it to me. She's already shown it to your parents." That's when we sat down and said together, "Enough." We hired security for the wedding, showed them photos of Brittany, my mother, and my father with clear instructions. Do not let these three in. No exceptions. Did it hurt to do that? Yes. But after everything they'd already done, I wasn't about to risk the most important day of my life. On our wedding day, I woke up with a strange mix of joy and anxiety. We picked a modest venue at a small event space with a garden about half an hour outside the city. A little lake, wooden arch, string lights, white chairs on the grass. Real, down-to-earth, human. I stood in the bridal room adjusting my veil. Guests were already arriving, and my heart was pounding like crazy. We'd planned for everything. 2 guards at the entrance, 1 by the side gate. And still. Around 2:30, someone knocked on the door. One of the guards came in, lowering his voice. "Megan, we just stopped a woman trying to come in through the service entrance," he said. "Matches the photo you gave us of your sister. She's got a can of red spray paint in her bag." I froze. Wedding dress. Guests. Flowers. She wanted to ruin it. "Was she alone?" "Yes, calm as could be. Said she just mixed up the entrance." He showed me a still from the security camera. Brittany. Defiant face. Lips pressed tight. "Do you want us to call the police?" I thought for a couple of seconds. I had every right. After the assault, the lawsuit, the lies, the fake photos, now vandalism. But I said, no, just escort her off the property and make sure my parents don't get in either. He nodded. I sank back into the chair I'd just gotten up from and exhaled deeply. I wanted to cry, but my friend Tara was right there. She grabbed my hand and whispered, "That's it. They tried to break you, and you're still standing. That means you've already won. Pull yourself together and go get married. You survived the court mess, the gossip, the photoshopped other man, and a slap from your own mother, with a concussion on top. And you're still here. You know what that means? You beat them. Now get up. This isn't a tragedy. It's your wedding. You owe it to yourself, to Ryan, and to everyone who actually loves you to shine today." I wiped my face and stood up like I'd just put on armor. Uncle Peter walked me down the aisle. Strict, quiet, but when he took my arm, he squeezed my elbow in a fatherly way, and I felt an incredible calm settle inside me. The garden looked like something out of a movie. Summer evening, strings of lights, wooden arch decorated with daisies and wildflowers, just like I'd dreamed. Ryan was standing there, looking at me with those love-struck eyes. Everything else disappeared. Brittany, Mom, Dad. The lawsuits, they all stayed in the past. There was just me, him, and our love, tempered by every circle of hell we'd already walked through. The ceremony was simple, easy. The officiant, a pastor from Ryan's family church, a kind man with lively eyes, said a few short things, all to the point, about patience, respect, how it's not about money. When he said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," everyone started clapping and congratulating us from the heart. I almost cried from relief. The reception was exactly right. No lobster towers or staged show, just a real celebration. First, the band played an instrumental piece that sounded straight out of an old movie, then classic rock, then some country, and by the end of the night, 90s pop and even a couple of embarrassingly catchy early 2000s hits. Everyone found something they loved. No one was bored. The guys kept yelling, "Kiss, kiss!" The aunties whispered in corners about who'd lost weight and who was clearly aiming for a second marriage. Tara raised her glass and said, "Megan, you're like a phoenix. They tried to burn you to ash, and you still walked down that aisle glowing so bright everyone gasped." I laughed, then cried, but now from happiness. Ryan and I ate cherry cake, danced until we dropped, and when the guests showered us with rice at the exit, we ran to the car laughing like kids. I looked back at the venue. It glowed in the dusk like a little lighthouse. Our honeymoon felt like a gift from the universe. We took off to a tiny town on the Gulf Coast in Florida. No real Wi-Fi, but plenty of ocean, watermelons from roadside stands, and sunrises over the water. No court dates, no hysterics. Just him, me, and seagulls. For the first time in a long while, I could actually breathe. When we came back, we dove into the apartment. We found a small but bright condo in a quiet neighborhood not far from the city. With what was left of the money and our savings, we made a down payment. The mortgage was manageable on our salaries. For the first time in our lives, we weren't just throwing money into rent. We were paying for our future. Not a mansion, but cozy, comfortable. What else do you need? We were setting it up ourselves, hanging shelves, assembling the IKEA couch, arguing in Home Depot over curtain rods and tile colors, eating frozen dumplings straight from the pot at midnight, just like normal people. Wedding photos and travel shots went up on the walls, and in the hallway we stuck a cheesy little magnet from our Gulf Coast town, a beach and a sunset. Not the Maldives, but no debt from some crazy wedding package, and a light heart. Most importantly, ours. Home. One Saturday we were wrestling with that damned IKEA dresser. Ryan was grumbling that the instructions were clearly written for robots, not humans. Then he suddenly chuckled and asked, "Who do you think will be the first person to stay over here?" I froze for a second, looked away. A wild thought flashed through my head. Maybe my parents will come to their senses one day and apologize. Or Brittany, maybe. Then I shoved the thought away. I don't breathe in the direction of fantasy anymore. Whoever it is, I smiled, as long as they come with a clean heart. The holidays came and went. New Year's, Easter, my birthday. Each time, no calls, no messages, just silence. At first it stung, especially on my birthday, when not even a text from Mom came. But then I'd remember the slap, the hospital, the court, the lies, the paint, the fake photos, all that filth. And the hurt would step back. Clarity stayed. They are no longer my support system. Probably never were. Sometimes Ryan asks if I believe there'll ever be peace between me and my family. Maybe, I answer honestly. But sorry won't be enough. They'd have to actually change. So far, there's no sign of that. People talked about Brittany's wedding for a long time. They went all out. Champagne fountains, a string quartet, custom dresses for the bridesmaids. But some of our relatives refused to go on principle. They just couldn't stomach how cruelly I'd been treated. Some declined politely. Others said straight out, "We don't enjoy weddings like that." Then the whispers started about the loan my parents took out for all that splendor. Either they took out a second mortgage on their house or even borrowed against Grandma's condo in Florida. All to launder their reputation like last year never happened. But it did. And people remember. Life with Ryan goes on. We're getting stronger as a couple. At some point it hits me. Family isn't just the people who share your DNA. It's the ones who respect your boundaries, who are happy for you, and who don't humiliate you at every opportunity. I lost a lot, but I gained far more. A home, a husband, friends who stayed, and most importantly, I didn't lose myself. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more.
Alright, this is an original Tales First story. This is one of those where someone finally says no and protects what really matters. Alright, let's get into it.
My parents demanded that my 12-year-old daughter pay $100 towards a present for her cousin. If you don't pay, you are no longer family, my mom said. I didn't shout. I showed them who is no longer family. The next day, I had 53 missed calls. When I opened the front door, I knew something was wrong before I even saw Mia. The house had that too quiet feeling, like it was holding its breath, like the air had been told to keep a secret. Mia was at the kitchen table, shoulders hunched, backpack still on the floor where she'd dropped it. Her hair was pulled back too tight. Her hands were flat on the tabletop, palms down, like she was trying to keep them from trembling. "Hey," I said, soft. "What's going on?" She looked up, and that's when I saw it. The exhaustion that didn't belong on a 12-year-old. Not the normal middle school is annoying tired. Not, I stayed up reading tired. This was the kind of tired you're not supposed to see on a 12-year-old. The kind that makes someone's eyes look older than the rest of their face. "Mia?" I set my keys down slowly, like making noise might break her. "Did something happen at school?" She blinked once, like she was loading the right expression. "No?" Her voice came out careful, normal on purpose. "I just worked." I frowned. "Worked?" She nodded and tried to sit up straighter, like posture could hide fatigue. "I cleaned Mrs. Novak's house," she said. "For 3 hours." 3 hours? I stared at her hands. Her knuckles looked rubbed raw. The skin around her nails was red, like she'd been scrubbing at something that didn't want to come off. "You cleaned?" I repeated, because my brain was stalling. "Mrs. Novak's house." Mia nodded again, as if this was the most ordinary sentence in the world. "She paid me," Mia added, a small flicker of pride breaking through the exhaustion. $20. I didn't react immediately, because at first, my mind tried to file this under responsible kid, good work ethic. Neighbors pay for chores sometimes. I wanted to be that mom who says, "Wow, honey, that's impressive." But then Mia flexed her fingers, winced, and rubbed her palm like it hurt to exist. "And I still have homework," she said, voice dipping. "But I'm so tired, and my hands, I can't hold the pen right now. It hurts." I stepped closer, careful. "Let me see." She hesitated, just a beat, then turned her hands over. The skin was pruny in places, like she'd been in water too long. There were faint, purple-yellow patches on her wrist like she'd knocked it against something. Not dangerous. Not hospital. Just too much. My throat tightened. "Mia," I said quietly, "why did you do that today?" She looked down at the table like the grain of the wood was giving her instructions. "I needed money." There it was. The first crack. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Okay. For what?" I asked it gently, like I expected her to say a toy, a book, some game she didn't want to ask me for, and honestly, if Mia wanted something, she could ask. My husband Thomas and I weren't struggling. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Stable. The kind of stable that lets your kid be 12 without becoming an exhausted miniature adult. So I smiled a little, just enough to keep her calm. "What are you saving up for?" I asked. "Do you want something special?" Mia's mouth opened, closed. She swallowed. "It's not for me," she said, and something in my chest went cold. "It's for Sophie." Sophie, my niece. My sister Heather's older kid, the one my family spoke about like she'd solved world peace. Mia cleared her throat. "They're collecting money. For her birthday." I stared at her. "Who is collecting money?" Mia shrugged, like shrugging could make this smaller. "Everyone." Everyone. The word hit like a weight. "How much?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. Mia's voice got smaller. 100. My brain did a strange little stutter. $100? She nodded. I just stood there, frozen, trying to make it make sense. Sophie was 12. Same as Mia. There was no universe where a 12-year-old should be working herself into soreness to fund another 12-year-old's birthday gift. That sentence shouldn't even be possible. "Mia," I said slowly, "who told you that you had to pay $100? She hesitated again. Then, "Grandma." "My mother." Mia said it the way you say the name of someone who decides whether you're safe. And that's when I saw it. Beyond the tiredness, the other thing. The part that didn't come from cleaning. The part that didn't come from scrubbing floors. Fear. The kind that sits behind the ribs and presses. "Mia," I said, very carefully, "what exactly did Grandma say?" Mia's eyes got shiny. She blinked hard, like she could keep the tears inside by force. "She said..." Mia's voice wobbled, just once, then she clamped it down. "She said if I don't pay, I'm not... family." I felt my whole body go still. "What?" Mia stared at the table. "She said if I don't contribute, I'm no longer family." I didn't move. I didn't breathe, because my brain was trying to reject it. Like it was an email phishing scam and my mind was highlighting the obvious red flags. That's ridiculous. That's not real. That's not something a grandmother says to a child. But Mia's hands were still red. Mia's eyes were still wet. And Mia looked like she'd believed it. "Are you sure you understood her right?" I heard myself ask, because denial is a powerful drug. Mia nodded quickly. "Yes. She said everyone is contributing, and if I don't, then... I'm not family." A tear slid down her cheek. Then she added, "I didn't ask you. I thought it had to be my money. Like if you pay, it wouldn't count. And..." I broke open my piggy bank, but it wasn't enough. "Mia," I said, and my voice did something I didn't like. It cracked at the edges. "Oh, honey." She wiped her face with the heel of her hand like she was annoyed at herself for leaking. "I think I shouldn't have told you," she whispered. My stomach twisted. "Listen to me," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." But even as I said it, I knew something. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a weird joke. This wasn't my mother being a little intense. This was my mother being my mother. I stood up so suddenly the chair scraped. Mia jumped. "I'm going to call Grandma," I said. Mia's eyes widened. "Mom, it's okay," I lied, because it was not okay and we both knew it. I walked into the living room with my phone, like physical distance could keep Mia safe from whatever was about to happen. I didn't call to scream. I didn't call to fight. I called because there was a part of me, one stubborn, hopeful, humiliating little part, that needed to hear my mother deny it. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, like she hadn't just snapped a child's sense of belonging in half. "Hi, sweetheart," my mother said. "Everything okay?" I stared at the wall. "Mom," I said. "Mia told me something. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." "Oh?" My mother's voice was light. Curious? Performative. "Mia said you told her she has to contribute $100 towards Sophie's birthday present." A pause. Not surprised. Not confused. Just a pause, like she was deciding how to phrase it. "Yes," my mother said. "That's right." My hand tightened around the phone. "She's 12, I said, because sometimes stating reality feels like a prayer. "So?" my mother replied. 12-year-olds can work. They can learn." My pulse thudded in my ears. "And," I said slowly, "did you tell her that if she doesn't pay, she's no longer family?" My mother didn't miss a beat. "Yes," she said, calm as tap water. "Because she needs to learn what it means to support family, financial obligation, values." Values. Like Mia's sore hands were a lesson plan. I stood there, staring at nothing, feeling something inside me go quiet. Not angry, not explosive. Quiet, like a door closing. "Okay," I heard myself say. "What?" my mother asked, suspicious now because "okay" is not the response she likes. "I have to go," I said. "Eleanor." I ended the call. I stood there for a second with the phone in my hand, and I could hear Mia in the kitchen shifting in her chair, the soft squeak of it, and I knew exactly what was going to happen next. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this wasn't over. "I need you to understand something about me. I wasn't born with a backbone. I grew one the hard way, like a callus. I was the oldest of 3, 2 years between each of us. Heather came after me, then Leo, the baby, the miracle boy, the one who could burp and still get applause. When I was little, my parents loved to say we were struggling. They said it like it was a weather pattern, like poverty was a season that just happened to us. And when families struggle, someone always gets assigned to understand it. That someone was me. Heather got to be cute. Leo got to be little. I got to be reasonable. On Christmas mornings, Heather would unwrap something that made her squeal. Leo would get something soft and bright and age-appropriate, and my mom would clap her hands and say, "Look at his face!" And I would get something, not nothing. That would have been too obvious. Something small, something safe, something that came with a smile and a line that sounded like praise. "You're older," my mother would say. "You understand." They said it like understanding was a gift, like it should make me proud. And for a long time it did, because if you're the kid who gets less, you learn to make a story that doesn't hurt. You tell yourself, they're younger, they need more. You tell yourself, we don't have money. You tell yourself, it's fine. I'm fine. Chores came next. When I was old enough to reach the sink, I was old enough to scrub it. I did dishes. I folded laundry. I cleaned, i.e., helped. Heather was too busy with school. Leo was too little. Except then Heather stopped being too little, and somehow she stayed too busy. By the time Heather was the age I'd been when I started doing half the house, she still had the kind of chores that were optional, the kind you could forget without consequences. I had the kind that became my personality. "You're the responsible one," an adult would say, like responsibility was a crown and not a chain. And I believed them, because again, rigged game. But I didn't know it was rigged yet. I was 12 when I started working, dog walking, small cleaning jobs, odd little things neighbors paid kids for because it made them feel like they were helping. My parents loved it. Not in a "we're proud of you" way, in a "this is useful" way. They called me independent, mature, a helper. And what happened to the money? It didn't become mine. It went where family money goes when you're the oldest, into the household. Groceries, bills. We need it this week. Just until payday. You understand, right? I understood. I always understood. When Heather and Leo got old enough to work, they didn't. Not once. Not even for fun money. And do you know what I told myself? Not favoritism. I told myself, we must be doing better now, because imagining your parents are unfair is like imagining the floor might vanish. You'd rather keep walking and pretend you don't feel it wobble. If I ever hinted at it, if I ever let a sentence slip that sounded like, why do they get, my parents shamed it out of me. How could you even think that? My mother would say, wounded. Of course we love you all equally. Then she'd smile, sweet as poison. But you're the oldest, she'd add. You need to contribute. You need to be useful. That's what family is. Useful. That word stuck to me. It shaped me. It became the reason I didn't go to college. My parents told me they supported whatever I wanted. They were very generous with words. But money? They couldn't. They said it was wiser not to. They said it like they were giving advice. I looked at the costs and the lack of support and felt that heavy, practical certainty. There's no way. So I went straight to work after school. I started low. I climbed anyway. I didn't get the college experience. I got the pay rent and don't die experience. I worked hard. I got promoted. I became reliable. Eventually, I ended up in management. Stable, decent income. The kind of job that makes your parents proud when they can brag about it. And then Heather went to college. And Leo. There was money then. Not huge, not lavish, but enough. Enough that they could go. When I asked about it, careful, casual, pretending I didn't care, my parents gave me the same story. It was a few years later, they said. We were doing a little better. And then the line that always finished the conversation, you're the oldest. You have to understand. Heather studied something arts-related. She changed majors. She got married. Had 2 kids. Money was always a problem, always just out of reach. Leo graduated and then went traveling. I remember hearing about it and thinking, where did he get the money? I also remember the way my parents' voices sounded when they talked about it. He needed it. He was finding himself. It was important for his life. So they helped him. And by then, I was the only one with a truly stable income. Thomas and I built a solid life. We worked for it. We budgeted. We planned. We didn't treat other people's money like a backup plan. My parents retired, and the family story shifted smoothly into the next chapter. Eleanor contributes. I sent money, regularly, helped with mortgage gaps, bills, emergencies, little monthly transfers that became background noise, and it was treated like normal, like air, like gravity. Then Heather's kids became the center of everything. Sophie, the golden child, got gifts that made my jaw tighten. Not because I wanted Sophie to have less, because my parents would call me to say they couldn't afford something, and then 2 days later, they'd be squealing about a gift they couldn't resist buying for Sophie. We just couldn't help ourselves. They'd laugh. And Mia? Mia got budget gifts and familiar explanations. We'd love to do more, honey, but... And Mia would smile politely because she had the same illness as me. Understanding. Thomas noticed. He said it out loud once. They treat Sophie like royalty, he said. And Mia like... an afterthought. I told myself he was imagining it. Because if he wasn't imagining it, then I'd have to accept something I'd spent my whole life refusing to accept. And then Mia came home with sore hands, and my mother looked at my daughter and did to her what she'd done to me. Only this time, I could see it. Because it wasn't happening to me anymore. It was happening to my child, And suddenly, understanding didn't feel like a virtue. It felt like a trap. The call with my mother ended, and the house felt different. Like the moment a song cuts off mid-note and you realize you've been bracing for the chorus. Mia was still at the table. Thomas hadn't come home yet, and I was standing there with my phone in my hand, staring at the screen like it might apologize. I didn't call my sister right away. I want to say I did, like I was fearless and decisive and ready to burn bridges with a match and a smile. The truth is, I stood in the living room and told myself there had to be a reason. There always is. That's what people like me do. We collect reasons like receipts. Proof, proof, proof. So we're allowed to finally stop. Then I thought, Heather. And the weird thing is, I wasn't even calling to fight. I was calling because I needed clarity. Did my sister know they were shaking down a 12-year-old? Heather picked up like she'd been waiting. Hey, she said, bright. I stared at my wall again. My walls have heard a lot. Did you know, I said, keeping my voice flat, that Mia was asked to contribute $100 towards Sophie's birthday gift? Heather didn't hesitate. Oh, yeah. Just, yeah. Like I'd asked if she knew it was raining. I swallowed. Heather, she's 12. Heather sighed, already annoyed. Eleanor, listen. It's for something big. What? I said slowly. Is something big? Heather's voice warmed up, like she couldn't wait to talk about it. It's a horse camp, she said. It's offered through school, like an optional thing. Sophie's best friends are going. She's been talking about it forever. A horse camp. Of course it was a horse camp. The kind of thing that costs a lot and makes everyone act like it's more important than it actually is. How much? I asked. Heather said it like it was obvious. Tuition is $900. 900? I blinked hard. So, I said, very calmly, you're collecting money so your 12-year-old can go to a horse camp. And you decided my 12-year-old should help pay for it. Heather made a sound like I was being difficult, like I was refusing to join a group project. Come on, she said. It's only $100. Only $100. I let the silence sit. Just a beat. Heather filled it with a little laugh that tried to sound light. And I mean, she added, I knew she's doing jobs now, so she has an income. My jaw tightened. I could hear Mia in the kitchen moving her pencil around, trying to pretend she wasn't listening. Heather continued, and her voice got that tone, half compliment, half expectation. She's just like you were. Responsible, Heather said. I thought you'd be proud. I felt something in my chest settle into place. Not rage. Not shock. Recognition. No, I said. Heather paused. No what? No, I repeated, clearer. My daughter isn't paying for Sophie's trip. It's not a trip, Heather snapped. It's a camp. Oh, sorry, I said, dry. My bad. My 12-year-old isn't paying for your 12-year-old's $900 horse camp. Heather exhaled sharply. God, you're so dramatic. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue the way we used to argue as kids, where you try to win by outlasting the other person. I just said, we're not contributing. Heather's tone shifted, slightly colder. Fine. It's your choice. But supporting family is a good thing, Eleanor. You know that. And there it was again. Family. Obligation. Contribution. The same song. Different verse. I have to go, I said. Heather scoffed. Whatever. I ended the call. I stood there for a second, phone still in my hand, and I felt empty. Not sad. Empty like you finally stop carrying something and your arms don't know what to do. Then I went to my computer, Not because I'd planned it, because my body moved before my fear could argue. My banking app opened with that cheerful, neutral design, soft colors, friendly fonts, like it wasn't about to become a crime scene. I clicked into recurring payments, and there they were. Little lines, little labels, little normal things that had been siphoning off my life. Standing transfer, mom and dad mortgage, $450 per month. Standing transfer, Heather mortgage top-up, $300 per month. Monthly transfer, Heather kids, $75 per month. Monthly transfer, Leo support, $100 per month. Family utilities help, $60 per month. I stared, because when you see it all in one place, it stops being helping. It starts being a system. I clicked the first one. Cancel. Confirm. The screen asked if I was sure, in that polite tone apps use when they're about to change your life. Yes. Cancel. Confirm. One after another. It should have felt scary. It felt clean. Then I handled the access issue. The little ways my sister and brother had been able to treat my money like a shared resource. I revoked it, removed it, shut it down. No announcement, no warning, just consequences. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the last confirmation screen disappeared and my lungs remembered how to work. I leaned back and laughed once, quiet, disbelieving, not because it was funny, because it was absurd, because I'd been doing this for so long I'd forgotten I could stop. The front door opened an hour later. Thomas walked in, tie loosened, face tired. He paused when he saw me at the computer. "What are you doing?" he asked. I turned to him, and my voice came out steady. "I'm taking back control of my life." Thomas stared at me for a second. Then his shoulders dropped like he'd been waiting years for those words. He didn't cheer. He didn't tell me I told you so. He just nodded once. "Okay," he said. "I'm here." Mia appeared in the doorway like she'd been hovering. She held a little envelope in her hands, crumpled bills and coins inside. "I counted," she said quickly. "I have $90 now. Even with the 20, I still don't have 100. I just need 10. My stomach clenched. Mia's voice got brighter, like she was trying to sell me on the plan. "I'm gonna go ask Mrs. Novak if she needs anything else cleaned," she said. "Just a few more hours, then I'll have it." She said it like it was normal, like it was reasonable, like it was her job to buy her place in the family. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $10 bill. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask if she wanted it. I just placed it in her hand. Mia blinked at it, confused. "Mom?" Then I held her gaze. "You're not going," I said. Mia frowned. "What do you mean, I'm not going?" "You're not paying," I said, clear. "You're not going, and we're not paying them a penny." Mia's face shifted, confusion to panic in real time. "But Grandma said..." Her voice shook. "Grandma said if I don't pay..." She stopped mid-sentence, as if saying it out loud was painful to her. I crouched so I was eye level with her. "Mia," I said, low and steady, "listen to me. You don't pay for love. You don't pay for approval. If someone tells you your place in the family costs money, then that's not love. That's a transaction." Mia stared at me like she was trying to learn a new language. "If they want you," I continued, "they want you because you're you, not because you scraped together $100. Mia's fingers tightened around the 10. "But what if they don't?" she whispered. I swallowed. "Then that hurts. And it's not your fault. And we don't chase people who treat you like that." Mia's eyes filled again. "Everyone's going to be mad." "Let them," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "If their love comes with a price tag, then it's not love, and you're not buying it." Mia stared down at the bill. Why did you give me the 10? She asked, small. Because I want you to have it, I said. It's yours. You can spend it on yourself. And because you don't need to work yourself sick to keep adults happy. Behind her, Thomas didn't speak. He just stood there, solid, present, like a wall at my back. I opened my phone and went to the family group chat, the one full of party chatter and emojis and people pretending everything was normal. My fingers hovered for 1 second. Then I typed. I posted a clear message. Mia would not attend Sophie's birthday party because she was asked to pay $100 towards Sophie's present, and I do not allow that. We would not be coming. Send. The chat went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then it started. Message after message. Calls. More calls. I set my phone down. I didn't answer. The next day, I had 53 missed calls. It was not over. It was just the beginning. A few days later, I went to pick Mia up from school. I was tired, but it was the clean kind of tired. The kind you feel after making a decision you should have made years ago. I pulled into the pickup line, and my heart dropped before the car even stopped. Because I saw them, my parents, standing near the curb like they belonged there. Like they had a right, and Mia was with them, close to tears. I hadn't removed them from pickup permissions yet. It hadn't even occurred to me that they'd try this, that they'd go around me. I parked wrong. I didn't care. I got out and walked fast. Mia, I said, sharp with fear. Hey, what's going on? My mother turned with that familiar expression, concern arranged neatly on her face. Oh, Eleanor, she said, like I'd interrupted something normal. We just had to talk to her. My father stood beside her, quiet, watching, saying nothing as usual. My hands curled into fists. Why are you talking to my child? My mother's mouth tightened. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That sentence. Always that sentence. Mia's eyes were glassy. Her face was strained like she'd been holding in sobs for the last 10 minutes. It's nothing, my mother said breezily. We just wanted to clear things up. Then, like they were leaving a cafe, not a crime scene, they walked away. And Mia stood there shaking. I knelt beside her immediately. Mia, what did they say? Mia's face crumpled. It's all my fault, she whispered. My blood went cold. What? I destroyed the family, Mia said, voice breaking. Everyone's mad, and it's because of me. I stared at her, horrified. Mia, no. I shouldn't have told you, she rushed, words spilling like panic. I should have just paid. Then you wouldn't be fighting with them. You're not talking to them because of me. I felt sick. I felt rage, hot, sharp, at my parents for putting this on a child. And worse than the rage was the realization. It had worked. They'd found the one pressure point that could still move me. Mia. I took her face gently in my hands. Mia, I said, slow and clear. Look at me. She tried. She was crying now. This is not your fault, I said. Not in any way. Mia shook her head like she didn't know how to believe it. They said, she sobbed. They said I broke the family. I swallowed hard. No, I said. They did. A long time ago. You just showed me. Mia's breath hitched. I stood up and took her hand. We're going home. In the car, she kept wiping her face, like she was embarrassed to be human. When we got home, Thomas was there. He saw Mia's face and his expression changed instantly. What happened? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I shut the door behind us with a careful click. Then I said, they cornered her at school. Thomas's jaw tightened. We sat with Mia at the kitchen table, the same table where this started, and we did something I should have done sooner. We told her the truth. Not in a dramatic speech. Not in a lecture. In a way a child could carry. Mia, I said, relationships aren't supposed to feel like this. Love isn't supposed to come with threats. Thomas leaned forward. Grown-ups don't get to blame kids for grown-up choices. Mia's voice was small. But they're family. I nodded. They're related to us. That's not the same thing. And in that moment, I made the decision that changed everything. It wasn't just money anymore. It wasn't just a boundary. It was safety. They didn't get access to my child. Not ever again. A few weeks passed. I removed my parents from every pickup list, every contact list. I took every administrative step required to make sure they couldn't do an end run around me again. It wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. Then, a few weeks later, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and there they were. My parents. And Heather. They stood on my porch like a committee that had come to audit my boundaries. Thomas moved in behind me, quiet, solid, the human version of don't try it. I opened the door. My mother smiled first. She always smiled first. Like if she smiled fast enough, she could skip the part where she'd done something wrong. We're willing to let this go, she said. Heather nodded, like she was signing off on a budget. Yeah. Mom says you're still upset about the $100 thing. The $100 thing, I repeated. My mother waved a hand. It was a misunderstanding. Heather snorted. Not even. Just a bad idea. Fine. We hear you. That was their apology. A shrug wearing lipstick. My father stared past my shoulder into my house, like he was checking whether the lights were still on, like my home had always belonged to him a little. My mother took a breath, and her tone shifted into the real reason they'd come. Okay, she said, bright. So, we can put this behind us and go back to normal. Normal. There it was again. Normal. I pay. You pretend. Heather's voice went tight, urgent. Because I'm behind, Eleanor, and Mom and Dad are stressed. This isn't cute anymore. I didn't move. I didn't invite them in. I didn't offer water. I just let the porch air do its job. No, I said. My mother blinked, offended by the concept. No. What? No to normal, I said. No to payments. No to you showing up here like this is a negotiation. Heather laughed once, sharp and humorless. Are you seriously punishing everyone because Mom said something stupid? I looked at her. Heather, your definition of punishment is me not funding your life. My father finally spoke, soft and aggrieved. We're family. Yeah, I said. That's the problem. You keep saying family and hearing ATM. My mother's smile cracked. Eleanor, don't be nasty. I tilted my head. I'm not being nasty. I'm being accurate. Heather lifted her chin. You make more than me. You can help. You've always helped. And you've always taken, I said. No heat. Just truth. Heather's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I pointed with my chin, not my hand, small, controlled. When I was 12, I worked. I handed my money over. You didn't. Leo didn't. You all called it being the oldest when it was me, and being young when it was you. My mother's mouth tightened. We did our best. You did what was convenient, I said. Then you got older, and you called it values. My father's jaw flexed like he wanted to argue, but he didn't have a clean place to stand. Heather tried anyway. This is selfish. Sophie needs that camp. I cut in gently, which somehow made it sharper. No, Sophie wants that camp. Mia needs her family not to treat her like a bill collector. Heather's face went red. Oh my God, you're acting like we asked her to sell an organ. You asked her to sell her piece, I said, for a horse camp. Silence landed. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just the moment where the math finally showed on their faces. My mother tried to regroup. Fine. Mia shouldn't pay. You're right. Happy? I waited, because that wasn't the point, and they knew it. My father cleared his throat. So, what do you want? There it was, finally honest. What do you want so we can get the money back? I want you off my daughter, I said. Forever. My mother stiffened. We are her grandparents. And you used that to make her cry at school, I said. So no, you don't get that title anymore. Not in practice. Heather took a step forward, voice sharpening. You can't keep her from us. Thomas moved, just a half step closer behind me. Not threatening, just present. A reminder that I wasn't alone. I looked at Heather. Watch me. Heather opened her mouth, then closed it. My mother tried for wounded. After everything... I didn't let her build the speech. After everything, I learned something important. I turned my head slightly, not taking my eyes off them. Mia, I called. Mia appeared in the hallway, small and tense like she expected lightning. Thomas shifted closer to her, still not touching, just anchoring. My mother's voice snapped. Eleanor, don't drag her into this. I kept my tone level. I'm not dragging her. You already did. Mia's eyes flicked to my parents, to Heather, then back to me. I took a breath. One. And delivered it clean. She's a child. You don't get to put your problems on her, and you don't get to use her to reach me. Mia's shoulders dropped a fraction, like her body understood safety before her brain did. Heather's face went pale in a way that made her look younger, smaller. My father stared at the porch boards like they might open up and swallow him. My mother's mouth worked, open, close, like she was searching for a word that wasn't ugly. She didn't find one. Heather recovered first, because she always did. This is unbelievable. I nodded once. Yeah, it is. My mother's voice went flat, icy. Fine. They turned and walked away with the stiff dignity of people who'd tried nothing and were all out of ideas. I watched them reach the driveway. Then I closed the door. Click! And that was it. No speech, no debate, no encore. Just the sound of an ending that didn't need their permission. 6 months later. Still no contact. I don't hear from them directly, because I don't answer, but somehow I still get updates from relatives who don't want to get involved. They always say that right before getting fully involved. Leo's travel ended early. Apparently, self-discovery has a return policy when the money runs out. Heather picked up longer hours and now looks permanently offended by reality. She complains a lot. Which is fair. Paying your own bills is a bold new experience. My parents are selling the house. They're calling it downsizing and going cozy. Sure, cozy is one word for we can't afford this anymore. Meanwhile, our home is easy, quiet, light. Mia doesn't come home with sore hands. I don't wake up to guilt. Our money stays in our life. And we're going places. Actual trips. Not apologies, not negotiations. Just us. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more. She isn't needed by anyone, my husband said about his 8-year-old daughter. Just send her back, my family snapped. She's a burden. I didn't send her back. I took action. 10 years later, their faces went pale when they saw her step up to the microphone and thank me first. Not her father. Not the grandparents who suddenly remembered how to smile for photos. Me. And the funny thing is, I didn't do anything heroic that night. I didn't leap onto a stage or deliver a speech that made the room cry. I just sat there in a navy dress I bought on sale and tried not to smudge my mascara. Because 10 years ago, when that same little girl showed up at my front door with a suitcase and a face full of fight, I made a decision that didn't look impressive in the moment. It looked like paperwork. It looked like late-night homework battles. It looked like holding a kid through a panic attack in a pediatric cardiology waiting room while strangers stared at me like I'd personally invented childhood trauma. It looked like staying. After the ceremony, I went back to my hotel room and stood in front of the bathroom mirror, peeling off makeup with a cotton pad like I was wiping the day away. The lights above the sink were harsh. They always are in hotels. It's like they're designed to help you confront your choices. My cheeks were flushed. My eyes were tired. But for the first time in a long time, my shoulders felt light. Outside the bathroom, I could hear the muffled chaos of a busy venue even on a quiet floor. Someone laughing in the hallway, a door closing, a distant elevator ding. Steph, was in the main room texting her workshop mentor, probably asking if that one sentence on stage had just started a war she didn't mean to start. Steph had been 8 when Mark dropped her in my hallway. Tonight she was 18, 10 years later exactly. On stage, she'd been calm, collected. The kind of young woman you assume had 2 stable parents, a golden retriever, and a childhood full of piano recitals. It's a convincing performance, but I know the truth. I know that when she was 8, she slept with her suitcase half-packed under the bed. Not because she was organized, because she didn't believe she was allowed to stay anywhere. Tonight, she accepted a National Young Writers Award, nothing Hollywood glitter famous, but real. The kind of award that turns talented kid into book deal meeting, that changes the way people treat your name. The auditorium was full. The host told jokes. The photographer barked, "One more! Hold it!" And when Steph walked up, I saw my family sitting together in the second row like they were entitled to front seats in the story of her life. My mother was there, wearing that expression she saves for judging lawns and weddings. I approve, but only because I'm generous. My mother-in-law clutched her purse like it was a shield, and Mark, my ex-husband, sat between them, polished and comfortable, like a man who thought he'd aged into innocence. They leaned forward when Steph's name was announced, as if she'd been winning awards for them this whole time. Then Steph started her speech. She thanked her editor, her mentors, the workshop director who'd pushed her, the librarian who'd slipped her extra books and never made her feel strange for wanting more. And then she paused. Not the dramatic pause that's meant to land well. A real pause, the kind that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. My mom, Kate, saved my life, she said. And in that half-second of stillness before the applause exploded, I watched 3 faces do the exact same thing, in perfect unison. Blank, then pale, then tight. Because Steph didn't say stepmom, she didn't say Mark's wife, she didn't say the woman who happened to be there. She said my mom. And the people who'd called her a burden had to sit there in public while strangers applauded the woman they once tried to shame into giving her away. I didn't look at them afterward. I didn't need to. I wasn't always the woman who could outlast chaos. I used to be normal. Or at least normal-ish. I met Mark in my 20s. I was teaching elementary school and pretending I wasn't terrified of adulthood. The kind of terrified you hide behind lesson plans and grocery lists. Mark had this quiet charm. Nothing loud, nothing flashy. He listened. He made you feel like your words mattered, which is a dangerous skill in a man if you ask me. He told me early on he'd been married before. 19. A rushed marriage after a pregnancy. 2 kids trying to be adults and failing in real time. There was a kid, he said, shrugging like it was a minor plot point. A girl. His ex, Jessica, had made the divorce miserable. According to him, she blocked him, moved, kept the kid from him. He talked like he'd been wronged by a system, not like he'd been absent by choice. He paid child support, court-ordered, automatic withholding from his paycheck. He said that part like it proved he was a good man, and I believed him, because I wanted to, because Mark felt like stability. We got married, bought a modest house, mortgage, yard, the whole American starter pack. We both worked at first, me teaching, him working long shifts as an engineer at the local power plant, until I got pregnant and my dream arrived right on time. Pete came first, then Freddie not long after, like he hated the idea of being left out. The boys were bright and curious, and the kind strangers call easy, like it's luck. Pete learned to read early. Freddie talked like a tiny professor. I quit teaching and stayed home. Mark worked more. It was the usual trade. I told myself it was temporary just until the kids were older, and for a while, I didn't think about the child from Mark's first marriage at all. Neither did he. And that should have told me everything. One afternoon, Mark came home early, too early, and I made the mistake of feeling relieved. I thought maybe he'd take the boys outside. Maybe I'd get 10 minutes of quiet. Maybe I'd drink coffee while it was still hot, like a woman who had her life together. I opened the door and saw a suitcase. Mark walked in holding the hand of a thin little girl with tense shoulders and eyes like broken glass. She was about 8, small for her age, sharp in a way that didn't feel like confidence. It felt like defense. "This is Steph," Mark said. Then, like he was introducing a new blender, he added, "My daughter." My brain stalled. Completely. Like a computer trying to open a file it wasn't built for. Mark kept talking because silence makes some men itchy. "Jess called me at lunch," he said. "Told me to meet her by the gate. Said she's done. Said, I did 8 years, now it's your turn. Fair is fair." He made a face like he'd been inconvenienced by a bad return policy. "She's in Los Angeles now," he added. "Chasing some guy." Steph's fingers tightened around the suitcase handle. Mark didn't notice. Or he noticed and didn't care. "My mom's in Sarasota," he continued, "helping my sister. She had twins, so Steph's here. For now." For now is what people say when they don't have a plan, but want you to pretend they do. Steph yanked her hand away from Mark and stood in my hallway like she was ready to bolt. I crouched slightly, teacher voice sliding on automatically. "Hi, Steph. I'm Kate." She stared at me like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. Mark chuckled and said, "Her mom's a cuckoo. Just flew the nest." Steph's eyes flashed. Pain, not anger. The kind of pain that turns into rage when it has nowhere else to go. I pulled Mark aside later and said quietly, "Don't insult her mother in front of her." Mark shrugged. "She abandoned her. It's true." "It's still her mother," I said. Mark looked at me like I was being dramatic. That was my first clue that I was about to be alone in this. We shoved a third bed into the boys' room, bought a small desk, a cheap bookshelf. I did what I always did when life hit hard. I organized. I enrolled Steph in our local public elementary school. Mark signed the paperwork because, in America, love doesn't get you access to a child's medical records. Legal authority does. At first, Steph was quiet. She watched us, measured us, like a cat deciding whether you're safe. Then she got comfortable, and comfort looked like war. She talked back to every request like it was an insult. "Wash your hands." "Why?" "Because you were outside." "So?" She snapped at Pete and Freddie like they were bugs. They tried to win her over because little boys believe love is something you can hand people like a toy. Pete offered her his favorite truck. Freddie brought her crackers. Steph responded by taking the truck and losing it, then calling Freddie gross when he cried. The first time I saw her shove Pete hard enough to make him stumble, I stepped in fast. "Steph, no!" She stared at me, eyes narrowed. "He's annoying. He's 4. So there was no softness, no guilt, just defiance. Then things started breaking. A cup here, a plate there, a toy cracked in half, a phone dropped accidentally. At first I thought she was clumsy. Then I caught her. She lifted a vase off the shelf, looked at it, and dropped it. Not a slip, not a mistake. A choice. The vase shattered across the hardwood. Steph gasped theatrically and said, "Oops," like she was auditioning for innocence. I stood there with a paper towel in my hand, staring at glass on my floor, and it hit me. This wasn't clumsiness. This was a test. Kids who expect to be thrown away push first. It's safer to be rejected on your terms than to be abandoned without warning. So she pushed, and the house shook. The emails started within weeks. Refusing to complete work. Disruptive behavior. Argumentative. Then the grades came in, and I felt my stomach drop. Steph wasn't just behind, she was missing the foundation. Reading was a struggle. Writing a paragraph looked like torture. Math was a minefield. She counted on her fingers with this tense focus that made me want to scream at the adults who'd let her get this far without help. I sat with her every evening at the kitchen table. I tried to teach the way I taught my students, calm, steady, patient. Steph fought me like learning was humiliation. Every correction turned into a battle. Every worksheet became a standoff. After an hour, I'd be exhausted. Steph would smirk like she'd won, and the work would still be undone. Then the health issues surfaced. She needed glasses. Not dramatic, but enough that she'd been squinting for who knows how long. She had a nervous tic that showed up when she was stressed, an eye blink, a shoulder twitch. Subtle, but constant once you noticed it. And at a routine pediatric visit, the doctor paused with the stethoscope and said, "I'd like a cardiology consult." Nothing panicked, nothing dramatic, just serious. So I added specialists to my calendar: pediatrician, optometrist, pediatric cardiologist, more waiting rooms, more forms, more insurance calls, more people glancing at me like I was the reason this child looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. In America, people love the phrase, "it takes a village." They don't mention the village mostly shows up to stare. Mark wasn't much help. He worked late. Weekends, double shifts. When he was home, he wanted quiet. He wanted peace. He wanted the kind of family life that exists in commercials. Steph listened to Mark more than she listened to me. One look from him could shut her down. But Mark rarely used that look, because that would require effort. Mostly, he handed her back to me like a bag he didn't want to carry. "You're home," he'd say. "You deal with it." When I tried to talk, really talk, about how bad things were getting, Mark shut it down. "What are you complaining about?" he snapped. "You don't work. We're not hurting for money. You're a teacher. If anyone should know how to handle kids, it's you." Then the criticism started. The house wasn't clean enough. The kids were too loud. Dinner wasn't ready at the right time. And eventually, because it always gets personal, he criticized my body. "You've gained weight," he said one night, like he was reading a label. I stared at myself in the mirror later, turning sideways, squinting, and thought, I've gained responsibility. I've gained stress. I've gained a whole child. But sure, let's talk about my genes. Meanwhile, my mother began hinting that we should send Steph back. My mother-in-law suggested it with less gentleness. "Put her on a plane to Jess," she snapped. "Or send her to Sarasota. I'm here right now. Or there are programs." Programs. That polite word adults use when they mean we want her out of sight. Steph was always listening. She started sleeping with her suitcase half packed under the bed, and that broke something in me I didn't know could break. Mark came home early again one day, and I made the mistake of feeling relieved. I thought he'd take the boys outside. I thought I'd get 10 minutes of silence. Instead, he stood in the kitchen like he was announcing the weather and said, "I'm leaving." No build-up, no apology, no sadness, just an exit line. Then he told me about Ashley. He'd been seeing her for a long time. Long enough to buy her a condo. Long enough to involve his grandmother, sweet woman, trusting, who helped with money because she thought Mark was securing something for the family. Mark put the condo in Ashley's name so it wouldn't be counted in the divorce. He told me this like he expected applause for being clever. He tossed out a consolation prize. "I'm not going to fight you for the house," he said. "You can keep it. For the boys." Then he sighed like the conversation was exhausting him. "Only problem is Steph." There it was. The child reduced to a problem. Mark rubbed his forehead. "Jess doesn't want her," he said. "My mom can't take her right now. Ashley's young, no experience with kids. And Steph? She's hard." He looked at me like the solution should be obvious. "She isn't needed by anyone," he said, voice flat. "So just send her back. To Jess. Or wherever. Why are we all pretending this is normal?" My stomach dropped. And then I saw her. Steph stood in the hallway, frozen, eyes wide. She'd heard everything. She didn't slam a door. She didn't scream. She walked toward me like she didn't trust her legs, and then she grabbed my waist and sobbed into my shirt like I was the last solid thing in the world. "Kate," she choked. "Please, don't send me back. Please. I'll be good. I'll do anything. I want to stay." Her whole body shook. Mark and I stared at each other over her head, both of us stunned because this wasn't the bad kid everyone complained about. This was a terrified child who understood she was being traded like an unwanted item. I ran my hand over her hair, felt the bones of her shoulders under my palm, and something hard clicked into place inside me. This wasn't about whether she was difficult. This was about whether I could live with myself if I abandoned her too. I looked at Mark. "She's staying," I said. My mother heard and snapped into the phone, furious. "Just send her back. She's a burden." My mother-in-law said it too, in her own flavor. "You're ruining your life," she warned. "You have your own kids." I could have folded. I had every excuse in the world. Single mom, 2 small boys, a mortgage, a divorce, a child with health concerns, and a history of neglect. I could have looked at Steph and said, "I'm sorry." Instead, I held her tighter and told Mark calmly, "A kid isn't a soccer ball. You don't kick her back and forth when she's inconvenient." Mark didn't argue. He just left. People love dramatic action, the kind with yelling and door slamming and revenge that fits inside a 2-minute clip. That's not what I did. I did the unglamorous kind. I met with a family law attorney. I filed for divorce. And because I learned fast that love without legal authority is just stress, I pushed for what Steph actually needed: stability. Mark signed what he had to sign: the temporary guardianship order and medical power of attorney paperwork, because otherwise I couldn't even schedule cardiology follow-ups without being treated like a stranger. We got the guardianship order in writing. Steph lived with me full-time under that order. The boys did too. Mark had visitation on paper. In real life, he took Pete and Freddie every so often for a few hours, mostly for optics. Steph? He kept her at a distance like she was a reminder of his own failure. Child support came through the system the way it does when the court gets involved. Automatic, consistent, no dramatic envelope handoffs. Jess called twice a year. Birthday. Christmas. Sometimes a gift arrived. Generic. Like she was shopping for a coworker's kid. Steph stopped expecting more, which is a very quiet kind of heartbreak. And little by little, the chaos stopped being daily. Not because life got easier, because we got steadier. After the day she begged me not to send her away, Steph changed. Not overnight. Not magically. But the wall between us cracked. She stopped breaking things. She stopped hitting the boys. She started hovering near me in the kitchen, watching how I cooked, how I cleaned, how I handled stress. Like she was studying the rules of staying. Then she began doing small things without being asked. Wiping the table, folding towels, boiling pasta because she heard me sigh too loudly and didn't know what else to do. She'd take Pete and Freddie outside and run them around the yard until they collapsed, giving me 10 minutes of silence like it was a gift. Pete and Freddie, little boys with big hearts, forgave her faster than any adult ever would. They started calling her Sissy, like she'd never frightened them. Steph pretended not to care. But I saw the way her eyes softened when Freddie fell asleep on her shoulder. I went back to work part-time, tutoring evenings, rebuilding what Mark's departure fractured. Steph became my right hand. She watched the boys while I worked. She learned to make lunches. She helped with homework. And one day, without me asking, she started helping me help them, sitting with Pete while he struggled through math, quizzing Freddie on spelling words. It wasn't perfect. We still had bad days. She still had panic in her body sometimes, like it lived in her bones. But we were building something, a home that didn't evaporate when adults got bored. One afternoon, I had a rare moment to myself. The house was quiet. The boys were out. The laundry was, miraculously, under control. I sat in an armchair with a worn paperback I'd kept since college. Steph wandered in, sweat on her forehead from running around outside with the boys. She grabbed a snack, then dropped onto the couch and stared at the book in my hands. "What are you reading?" she asked. "It's about a man who makes a terrible choice," I said, "and spends the rest of the story paying for it." She stared at me like that sounded delicious. "Read it." "It's heavy," I warned. "I don't care." So I read a chapter. Steph listened like she was starving. When I finished, she exhaled slowly and said, "That was insane." Then softer, "Can I try?" From that point on, books became her oxygen. She devoured everything. Classics, modern novels, poetry she pretended she hated and then quoted back at me later. She argued with me about characters the way adults argue about politics. She laughed at dark humor like she'd been born with it. And for the first time, I saw who she might have been if she'd been raised with care from the beginning. A bright kid. A sensitive kid. A kid who felt everything too hard and needed words to hold it. One day she handed me a thick notebook like it was contraband. "Don't laugh," she said, hovering in the doorway. I opened it. Stories. Uneven, awkward in places, absolutely written by someone still learning how to control her own thoughts. But under the mess, there was something real. A voice. I looked up. "Steph, this is good." Her shoulders dropped like she'd been holding them up for years. I took the notebook to her English teacher, hoping for a writing club, a mentor, anything. The teacher flipped through a few pages, smiled politely and said, "This is cute. Kids write stuff like this all the time." They usually lose interest once they realize writing takes work. I walked out of that school with a smile so tight it could have held a cracked plate together. In the car, I sat for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, and thought, fine. If the system shrugs, I'll build something else. At home, I told Steph, "Your teacher loved it. She said the school writing club isn't your level." "Yes," I lied, but it was the kind of lie that protects a child's courage instead of crushing it. Then I called a local youth writing program run through a library and a community arts center, workshops, mentors, small groups of kids who carried notebooks like lifelines. I walked in with Steph's stories. They read them. And unlike the teacher, they didn't pat her on the head. They took her seriously. They invited her in. Steph lit up in a way I still can't fully describe, like someone finally said, "You're not too much. You're just something." Within a year, she had pieces published in small local outlets, then anthologies, then contests. By high school, she was winning statewide awards. By college, English and literature, her first real book deal happened. She worked part-time through it all because she hated asking for anything. When she handed me money and said, "For the house," I took it, thanked her, and quietly put it into a savings account I'd opened for her. Because if anyone deserved a safety net, it was the kid who'd grown up without one. That award night was the 10-year mark. What came next unfolded later, over years, slowly at first, then all at once. Jess came back when Steph started getting attention. Los Angeles hadn't given her the life she wanted. The relationship didn't last. The dream got expensive. And suddenly, Jess remembered she had a daughter. She showed up with open arms and dramatic emotion, like she could hug 10 years away. Steph was polite, never cruel, never rude, but she kept her distance like it was instinct. Mark tried too, in his own way, awkward texts, stiff compliments, occasional invitations that sounded more like obligations. Steph didn't scream at him. She didn't punish him with drama. She just didn't reach for him. And I understood that. Because when you grow up begging not to be sent away, you don't waste energy begging adults to be different. You build your own foundation. Steph's foundation was me, Pete, and Freddie. Pete grew into a focused, ambitious kid who eventually became an architect. The kind of man who shows love through reliability. He called me every Sunday, like clockwork. Freddie grew into a brilliant, intense kid who became a surgeon. He worked insane hours and still showed up to family dinners because he understood what showing up meant. And Steph became a writer whose work traveled farther than our little city ever had. Her books got translated. Her name started showing up in places I never imagined. And the first big thing she bought wasn't a flashy car. It was a small cottage by a lake. Because years ago, back when the kids were little and I was exhausted, I once sighed and said, "Someday I just want to live by water." Steph remembered. She bought the neighboring house for her own family too. 2 cozy homes behind one shared fence. Garden, a little pool for the grandkids. One afternoon she said quietly, "I want my children to have a grandma like you." I stared at my hands because looking at her made my throat tight. "You see what kids could be," she said, "and you don't throw them away when they're hard." I didn't answer right away, because what do you say to that? "Thanks for not being thrown away" is not a sentence anyone should have to mean. But Steph meant it, and so did I. That's why tonight, in front of the hotel mirror, wiping off makeup after another award ceremony, I felt something close to peace. Because I remember the version of this story that almost happened. The version where I listened. The version where I sent her back. The version where an 8-year-old girl learned, permanently, that adults only keep you when you're easy. Instead, I took action. Not loud action. Not dramatic action, paperwork, doctor visits, parent-teacher conferences, late-night talks, a steady home and a locked-in routine, the boring, relentless kind of love that changes a life. Now, the same people who once suggested shipping her off love to say they knew she had potential. People's memories get flexible when success is involved. Mine doesn't. Mine still remembers a thin girl in my hallway with a suitcase and eyes like broken glass, and the way she clung to me when her father said she wasn't needed. I'm grateful, still, that I didn't let anyone convince me she was a burden, because she wasn't. She was a child, and she deserved a home. Appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Drop a comment with your thoughts, because I read them all. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon with another story.